There are a gazillion builds I want to play this league. The problem is not farming divines or doing the tedious respecking over and over. The problem is running the fucking campaign. So to save a lot of time and headache, I made this one build setup to be used on every class. It's completely brain dead, mainly just being played as a walking simulator while we insta-kill bosses by fist-punching them in the balls. Using this setup, I've been running the campaign in 5 hours or so with no effort, watching a movie on the second monitor. So how do we go about doing this? Well, we actually got a lot of new build options for leveling this league. The first one being the Facebreaker gloves. As long as we're killing bosses, we're automatically scaling its damage. We'll pair this with strength stacking for a lot of extra defense and damage. We'll then pair this with Rolling Slam to nuke the living shit out of bosses. For running through packs of enemies, we're instead using Corrupted Blood 2. We're socketing this into our Infernal Cry and pairing it with Echoing Cry. Having this, all we need to do is shout at the sky, and we'll create an auto-casting damage over time aura around us that clear everything. And early on in the campaign, this is enough to kill everything. Later on, the skill falls off a bit, but then we have the Facebreakers picking up the slack in killing rares. What's nice about this is also that the campaign will look basically the same past level 6 when you've obtained Infernal Cry. Just use Infernal Cry for clear and Rolling Slam on bosses and rough elites. We're then slotting in a talisman in our second weapon set, so we can use Pounce for traversing. Those three are really the only skills you're going to be using up until level 40 or so, when you can also use Bloodhound Mark for some extra damage. Then, to make it as brain dead as possible to get the leveling setup online, we're only using uniques. So you will never have to worry about what items to use. In the planner, I've included the entire gear setup and at what level you can equip the different uniques. I've also included direct trade links to cheap variants of all the uniques so you can save some time and currency, because you don't really have to spend any currency to do this. The only item that costs a bit of currency is the Tabula Rasa, which is 3 divines right now, but it's definitely worth it as we're able to slot in 6 jewels at level 1. Alright, let's go over everything that you want to prepare before you start your leveling run. And trust me, it's definitely worth it to just spend 15 minutes and do this before leveling, as you'll save a lot of time in the long run. First, you're going to want to prepare some gems. As our bossing skill, we want Rolling Slam. This will be the first skill you're picking up, and you want to grab as high of a jeweler's orb as you can afford. I use 6 links because I can afford it, but if you're broke as shit, then just go with a 3 or 4 link. We're then just going to slot in as much damage as we can via all of our support gems, in this order. This skill has a massive stun build-up and a large base damage, allowing us to quickly nuke down bosses and elites. And when it comes to elites, I can recommend punching, then evading, as you'll then avoid the annoying animation of the skill. For Infernal Cry, we need a Corrupted Blood. This skill is quite difficult to scale, but the most important is that you keep upgrading your Infernal Cry. Then, we're pairing it with Echoing Cry for a lot of extra AoE and to have it auto-cast. Then, we're stacking some cooldown recovery. Because as we're moving, we're just going to pop the Infernal Cry as it runs out, and then we have a few seconds of not having to do anything, basically a walking simulator, and lastly, we just slot in some damage supports. For our Pounce, we're using it to traverse, but if you don't want to, then it's not really needed. It's quite nice to have on bosses though, as we can slap on the Mark for Death to break boss armor. Other than that though, we're just grabbing cooldown recovery and attack speed to traverse faster. Next is a big juicer skill, Herald of Blood. Since Corrupted Blood is a physical damage over time skill, we can slot this in and we'll wipe out the screen as soon as an enemy dies. We're then using it as our life and mana leech to stay full on both throughout the campaign. For a bit of extra AoE, we use Magnified Area and also Armor Break 3. as we can then remove the cooldown of Infernal Cry via endurance charges. Lastly, Bloodhound Mark unlocks late in the campaign, and once we get it, we can use this rather than pounce on bosses for armor break, and also to shock them via Charged Mark. I also have Blasphemy and Repulsion here, but this one's optional and only usable as you're approaching endgame. Instead, I recommend just slapping on Herald of Ash or a defensive persistent buff like Scavenged Plating. And again, you just prepare all of these gems before you start your run, and you can use them throughout the entire campaign without having to swap anything out. Next, we have the gear. You're going to use the same gear from Act 1 throughout the entire campaign, with the exception of just 2 items. Most of our single target damage comes from Facebreaker as mentioned, and then we have Tabula Rasa carrying the damage of our Corrupted Blood. You never swap these, nor your helmet, rings, or sneakers. The amulet, however, I swap out to an Astra Mentis at level 24 for solving all attribute requirements and a damage boost. The belt I also swap out for a Ryzlatha's Coil for added boss nuking damage at level 31. As you can see, I'm not really using any broken corrupted pieces, even though you can. The 2 important things here is first that you grab a good Anoint. There are a lot of good ones, but I choose Stylebender simply because I wanted a cheap and good Anoint that you all can afford. And secondly, you want some good jewels in your Tabula Rasa. You scale your Corrupted Blood via global physical damage here and damage with War Cries. You can also get War Cry cooldown recovery. Everything else is pretty useless for that skill, and any other modifiers you grab is for your Rolling Slam damage. So look for global physical damage, damage with War Cries, and War Cry cooldown recovery primarily, and then a few rage on hit for your Rolling Slam, and a bit of life and mana on kill. This is everything you need, and you don't need to spend more than a few exalts per jewel. Anything more than that is overkill unless you intend on leveling 1,000 alts. Alright, and one final thing about the gear. The pieces that you can't equip right now, you can just keep in your inventory because you're not really picking up anything from the ground apart from skill gems to upgrade them. So the only thing you need to do gear-wise when leveling is take a look at your inventory to see when you can equip your higher level items, and of course also keep upgrading your flasks. That's quite important, especially your mana flask, because that's how you'll sustain most of your mana. If you ever run out of mana when fighting, then you also have your mace strike that you can hit a few times with. Okay, and next let's head on over to the passive tree. Due to the new split personality rubies, it's so fucking easy to level up alts, because all you need is to grab all strength nodes towards nearest jewel slot. Then you just grab a split personality ruby that allows you to allocate warrior nodes, and you can use the same passive tree for all characters. Because all we're really looking for here is strength, physical damage, and Warcry bonuses, such as increased damage with Warcries and Warcry recovery. If you're leveling a Gemling or any other class that is close to the warrior nodes, then you can also just go straight on down, of course, as you're close to the warrior nodes already. But for the classes that are on the other side, you just head straight down, grab a split personality, and you follow the warrior passive tree. In the Mobalytics guide, you'll only see the warrior tree, and that's correct, because again, you just go to the nearest jewel socket and then you'll end up here. Wherever you go from here doesn't fucking matter as long as you go for the Warcry nodes first, and then the generic damage nodes. The tree should get you through the campaign, and then you can just swap to the build that you intended on playing in the end game, or keep playing it for a few more levels if needed. Alright, lastly, just a few leveling tips when twinking. First one being, kill all rares and magic enemies. You're gonna feel strong as hell, and your instinct will tell you to skip everything. But doing this, you'll get out-leveled hard by the mobs, which will inflict an XP penalty, and once that happens, you'll just get further and further behind in experience. You can, however, skip the white mobs, although in this build, You're just going to kill them with your corrupted blood as you're running. Next tip goes into the previous one. You want to stay within around 2 to 3 levels of the zone you're in, otherwise the XP penalty kicks in hard. If you accidentally over-level by a lot, which definitely happens sometimes, then you can just use Control Clicker Zone and run it over and over until you've catched up. Guy That Dies has a great guide on this with some good experience zones. I'll link that one in the description. He also has recommended levels per zone along with zone orders if you want to maximize your leveling. I don't really give a shit though. I just check the level of the zone and try to stay within a few levels. Tip number 3. Just get all the different campaign bonuses out of the way as fast as possible. There's a good checklist on MOBA that you can use to ensure you get all the permanent buffs. Because going back to the campaign when you're already in endgame feels like shit. Number 4. We've already discussed this, but prepare everything you need before you start your leveling runs. With all your gems, supports, and gear ready, you won't have to think and can just blast. Alright folks, that should be all you need to start leveling up your alts within 4 to 6 hours or so and can save fuckloads of time in the campaign. Drop a sub and I'll see you in the next one.